Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump hosting his first cabinet meeting of 2026. He's touting his economic agenda and tariff strategy while announcing his next plans for Venezuela. New videos emerged showing Alex Pretti, the man shot by immigration agents in Minneapolis, aggressively confronting federal agents more than a week before his death. Border czar Tom Homan announces progress with immigration enforcement cooperation with Minnesota after speaking with state and local leaders. Jason Blair reports. House Republicans introduced an election reform bill. The proposed legislation would require voter ID, proof of citizenship for voter registration, and an election day deadline for mail-in ballots. Fake bomb and death threats, and now a chilling warning that the UK Prime Minister will be shot if he allows Shen to perform. Why the Chinese Communist Party is targeting a US-based dance company. A $70 million expansion of a U.S. military base in Kenya, with the Trump administration priorities are along the Horn of Africa.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Thank you for staying with us. President Trump hosting his first cabinet meeting of 2026. In his wide range of comments, Trump touts his economic agenda and tariff strategy while announcing his next plans for Venezuela. NTD's Washington correspondent Mari Otsu brings us more from the White House. Mari, good afternoon. Tell us, what is the latest from the meeting?
Don, good afternoon to you. That's right. It was truly a wide-ranging meeting today, although it clocked in at only an hour and 20 minutes, which is about 2 hours less than the record-breaking 3 hours and 17-minute cabinet meeting from last year. And in it, President Trump was touting his economic agenda. This is as he's been ramping up domestic travel to one U.S. city per week in anticipation of the midterm elections. And this meeting today happened just one day after the Fed had its first meeting of the year, keeping its rate steady, something that President Trump criticized as usual. And the president said today that he'll be announcing his new Fed chair pick next week. And this is as the White House is touting the largest tax refund season in U.S. history, with President Trump saying today that the average refund is expected to be, on average, $1,000 higher than before, and attributing this economy to his tariff strategy. Take a look.
We've been given great national security because of tariffs, and we've also been given unprecedented income because of tariffs. I hope we're going to be successful with the Supreme Court case, because we're waiting, and we're taking in hundreds of billions of dollars, and we don't want to give it back, number one. And number two, and you know, the people that are fighting us on that case, by the way, are China-centric. These are people that are for China, but they're also outside of the United States.
Meanwhile, on foreign affairs, President Trump says that he is instructing Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy to immediately open up the airspace over Venezuela by the end of the day today. Take a look.
I just spoke to the president of Venezuela, informed her that we're going to be opening up all commercial airspace over Venezuela. American citizens will be very shortly able to go to Venezuela, and they'll be safe there. They'll be safe. It's under very strong control, and the people of formerly of Venezuela, some want to go back and some want to go back to visit, and they're going to be able to do that.
And on the Russia-Ukraine war, President Trump said today that he's asked Russian President Vladimir Putin to not target the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv for 1 week as they're experiencing record-breaking frigid temperatures there. And while he didn't take any questions today, which is rather unusual, the president does have 2 more events on his schedule where he may take questions. Later in the afternoon, a White House official tells us that he'll sign an order launching a new initiative to address drug addiction. And then later this evening, President Trump is expected at the premiere of the First Lady's documentary called Melania at the Trump Kennedy Center. Don, back to you.
All right, Mari, appreciate it. We're learning more about the man who was recently shot by federal agents in Minneapolis. New videos have emerged which show Alex Pretti aggressively confronting ICE agents more than a week before his death. The video captured by the news movement shows Pretti spitting at a federal agent's vehicle as it pulls away. Pretti kicks the SUV's taillight twice, breaking it. The incident happened on January 13th, 11 days before he was fatally shot by Border Patrol officers. A lawyer for the family has verified the person in the video is Alex Pretti. The video shows several agents tackling Pretti and bringing him to the ground before he is let go. When he turns his back to the camera, what appears to be a handgun is visible in his waistband. It's unclear whether the agents saw it or not. Pretti was fatally shot last week during a separate confrontation. Immediately after the incident, several officers and they said Pretti brandished a firearm during a protest and was carrying the gun when he was confronted by the agents. Customs and Border Patrol says it has put the two agents involved on administrative leave, calling it standard protocol. Minnesota will now allow jails to notify ICE when an illegal immigrant is being released, according to Border czar Tom Homan. Homan says if discussions keep going well with state leaders, then the amount of federal agents in the state could start decreasing. NTD correspondent Jason Blair has more.
When we have these agreements, it takes less law enforcement agents to do the job.
White House Border czar Tom Homan says that Minnesota jails will now be allowed to notify ICE when criminal illegal immigrants are being released so that ICE can come to the jail to make an arrest. Homan says that Minnesota state prisons have already been complying with this.
More agents in the jail means less agents in the street.
Homan says that when ICE agents can't make an arrest at a jail, they have to go out in the street.
Now we got to arrest somebody on his turf who has access to who knows what weapons. Now we got to send the whole team out. Then because of the hateful rhetoric and the attacks on ICE officers, now we got to send a security team behind the arrest team. I know that causes stress in the community.
Some people have argued that when local police work with ICE, it could discourage illegal immigrants who are victims of crimes to come to local police for help. Homan addresses this issue and says that it's not a problem.
All we want is to talk to the person that local and state law enforcement authorities locked in a jail cell.
Tom Homan was sent to Minnesota by President Trump on Monday to speak with state and local leaders amidst protests, social unrest, and tough working conditions for immigration authorities. Homan also made it clear that the administration is not backing down on its mission of immigration enforcement and that he'll stay in Minnesota until the problem is solved. Jason Blair, NTD News.
To continue our discussion on ICE operations in Minnesota, we're now joined by Randy Sutton, retired Las Vegas police lieutenant and both founder and chairman of the Wounded Blue. Randy, thank you for joining us today. First, your thoughts on Homan's news that we're going to see greater cooperation between ICE and the state.
Well, I think this is a big win for the Trump administration. And basically, this is what they've been asking all along is simple cooperation between the penal institution in Minnesota and ICE. You know, for years, literally for years, there has been cooperation. When ICE puts a detainer on someone, the prison or the county jail, depending on which case, has notified ICE and said, okay, you know, but the detainer is this. Please notify us within 48 hours of a release of someone who we need to pick up. And there's never been a problem with this until this insanity that's taken place. And that is what has been causing all of this consternation and this mass protest against ICE. It has been really dictated by the policies of sanctuary states and sanctuary cities.
And Vice President J.D. Vance has said he's only seeing this in Minnesota and not really in other states. But I actually have a clip here that I would like you to react to. So let's take a look at that.
Well, first of all, about the organization and the funding of the attacks on ICE. I'm not going to answer a lot about that because I'm not going to show our hand, but they'll be held accountable. Justice is coming.
So having heard that, Randy, how important is it that law enforcement gets to the bottom of these attacks on federal agents?
All right, so I literally just came back 3 days ago from Minneapolis. I was up there with the Wounded Blue, helping injured and disabled officers up there who have been, been suffering from all the post-traumatic stress that goes along with what's been happening. And I developed quite a bit of information from this. This is a highly organized and well-funded approach from the left that is literally dumping tens and thousands of dollars into this anti-ICE, anti-immigration enforcement effort. And they're highly organized. They have an incredible intelligence network. And so I understand why Tom Homan isn't talking about it, because this is going to require an immense investigation and people need to be held accountable.
So you've probably seen videos of what appears to be anti-ICE demonstrators using software to communicate and organize. Some are surprised by the level of organization they're seeing, and others report that some may even have access to license plate databases. So, I mean, are you surprised at all by all this?
Well, I am. I can't say that I'm surprised. I'm deeply. Uh, I've got a lot of issues here with the way that the enforcement aspect has been going. There needs to be a full FBI investigation into the funding of this organized insurrection. And believe me, I was there on the ground. I saw it with my own eyes. It is a highly organized effort here to interfere with the government. This isn't being done by some people in Minneapolis who are upset about the situation. These are paid protesters, paid agitators, trained and professional. Now you add to that the what you got to call the those who are weak-minded and involve themselves in this situation, but there is a well-funded issue here, and they are the major parties responsible for the violence.
So, Randy, I'm very curious to get your thoughts on a specific case of Alex Pretti. So I want to play this video now.
This is a moment the news movement filmed on January 13th in Minneapolis, showing a man who appears to be Alex Pretti interacting with federal immigration agents 11 days before Border Patrol shot and killed him. Our footage was analyzed by the BBC, whose facial recognition technology confirmed his identity to a 97% degree of accuracy.
What are you thinking after seeing that?
Well, this is not a surprise at all. He's been part of the issue here. There are a lot of individuals who have been brought into the mix here. It's really crazy how people react or act when they're in a mob situation. And clearly this individual has been involved in this agitation for an extended period of time. The fact that he armed himself to attack law enforcement, you know, I hate to say this, but if you're going to attack law enforcement and you're going to arm yourself at the same time, what do you think law enforcement's response is going to be when they gauge a deadly threat? Here's the thing. Law enforcement, you don't need to draw that gun. You don't need to point it at a police officer or law enforcement officer for them to infer a threat. Simply being armed and you know, uh, uh, having that threat available is a situation that escalates any law enforcement response.
I think you make an important point there, Randy, that you are allowed to exercise your Second Amendment rights, but you are not allowed to exercise your Second Amendment rights while breaking the law. So I just want to ask you one last question here. And based on the news that Homan gave today, are you hopeful that the chaos perhaps we're seeing in Minnesota will subside?
I actually think that this is a really positive sign. If the state of Minnesota and the counties who actually house most of the prisoners who need to be turned over to ICE, if they cooperate and they adhere to the doctrine of the ICE detainers, I think we will see a massive de-escalation of what is taking place and a massive elimination of the threats towards law enforcement. And I think we will see peace return to Minneapolis.
Okay, Randy, really great speaking with you and appreciate what you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And next, senators blocked a government funding minibus bill, paving the way for a second government shutdown. Our Washington correspondent, Luis Eduardo Martinez, has the details.
All Democrats and 7 Republican senators voted to block a minibus package of 6 appropriation bills to fund government through fiscal year 2026. Democrats have already signaled that they're willing to vote for 5 out of the 6 bills in the minibus, but would want to see changes to the bill to fund the Department of Homeland Security.
What the nation witnessed on Saturday in the streets of Minneapolis was a moral abomination. Federal agents shot and killed Alex Pretti, an American citizen, in broad daylight.
Any changes to the minibus package would send the bills back to the House of Representatives. And House Republicans have already signaled that they're not willing to make any drastic changes to the funding bill for the Department of Homeland Security that had already cleared the House over 2 weeks ago with the support of 7 Democrats.
Dramatic change is needed with the Department of Homeland Security before any appropriations bill related to ICE or CBP proceeds.
There are people that could do a better job in this. Number one, if you're going to protest, you have a right to protest in this country. You don't have a right to impede law enforcement efforts. That's number one. Number two, the mayor and the governor should actually be responsible and say, you do have a right to protest, but don't impede active investigation, law enforcement investigations.
The rhetoric needs to stop. This is not helpful to the American people. Whether it is, calling ICE Gestapo or calling American citizens domestic terrorists, people do have a right to protest. Law enforcement also has a right to do their job without being impeded.
Lawmakers are considering a short-term continuing resolution to fund the Department of Homeland Security while negotiations continue to avoid a long government shutdown.
Well, we're trending in the right direction, but I don't think we're quite there yet.
Have you talked to the White House about what to do?
Yes.
And what have they said?
Well, this passed him. Their work, I think there are discussions going on between the Senate Democrats and the White House, and those, hopefully that'll land soon. But right now, I think it's still a bit of a work in progress.
Government funding expires Friday at midnight, and the House of Representatives does not come back into session until next week. If the Senate does not pass the appropriation bills as they stand, there will be a partial government shutdown. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
House Republicans introduced an election reform bill. The proposed legislation would require voter ID, proof of citizenship for voter registration, and an election day deadline for mail-in ballots. Stay with us for more after this break. House Republicans have introduced a bill they say will improve confidence in U.S. elections. The proposal comes as the GOP works to maintain its majority in the House and Senate after midterm elections this fall. The proposed legislation includes requirements for voter ID, proof of citizenship for voter registration, and an election day deadline for mail-in ballots. The bill would provide an exception for mail-in ballots cast by overseas military personnel. The legislation would also prohibit mailing ballots to all voters through universal vote by mail systems. Republicans have dubbed the bill Make Elections Great Again Act. Democrats have criticized previous GOP proposals for election reform, arguing the measures disenfranchise voters and cause confusion. Republicans say they help maintain the integrity of U.S. elections. The FBI executed a search warrant yesterday at a Fulton County elections office outside Atlanta. The search comes amid ongoing scrutiny of Fulton County's handling of the 2020 presidential election. President Trump has long argued that election improprieties in Georgia contributed to his loss in the state. Last month, the Department of Justice filed a lawsuit against Fulton County, seeking access to voting records from the 2020 election. County officials had previously said records were under seal and could not be released without a court order. The lawsuit stems from a July resolution passed by Georgia's State Election Board, which called on the state attorney general to ensure compliance with voting transparency requirements. The FBI executed a search warrant at the Fulton County Elections Office not far from Atlanta. Joining us to discuss is political strategist Gerard Filitti, senior counsel at the Lawfare Project. Gerard, good afternoon. Can you just first off speak to the gravity of the situation of a raid of an election facility?
It tells you how serious this is when a judge, a federal judge, has signed off on a warrant, meaning that there's probable cause to believe a crime has been committed in order to execute this search. And it's not just a normal search. This is a raid. There is a concern implicitly here that if the raid were not carried out when it was, records might be lost or destroyed or otherwise be made unavailable. So this speaks to the seriousness of this situation, and it tells you that the Justice Department's investigation is really progressing smoothly and quickly.
So can you go a bit deeper into that? What exactly do you need to show or convince the judge of in order to get a federal search warrant in this context?
Well, you need to specify what you're looking for, how it connects to your investigation, and more importantly, that there is a reasonable basis to believe that some crime has actually been committed. So the FBI has to show those things to a federal judge, to a magistrate judge, in order to get a warrant. Now, warrants are not automatic. We may think that they are, but judges do look carefully to see if that burden is met. So this means that the FBI convinced the federal judge that the information they had and the case that they're pursuing is serious enough to warrant this.
So why engage in a raid specifically rather than perhaps other options like issuing a subpoena or getting documents some other way?
When you have a raid, you have the concern that if you simply ask for records, they will be destroyed. Someone will alter them. Someone will make sure that they're not found, not available. So the raid element is the element of surprise. It's the maximum chance that you have of obtaining documents or other evidence without giving people a heads up that they have an opportunity to destroy or tamper with it. And again, when we're talking about voter fraud, when we're talking about allegations of the integrity of our electoral system, you want to take this seriously, and you don't want to give people an opportunity to hide the evidence.
So speaking of documents, some of them include, ballots, tabulator tapes from the scanners used to tally the ballots, electronic ballot images, voter rolls. What could evidence of wrongdoing look like in this case?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I think we will see more as time progresses. But I think part of this will be an audit by the FBI to see whether these documents are original, whether they are presumed to be original from election night, from the voters themselves, or whether there is any indication that there was tampering with them, whether some were not counted or some were counted in different ways. So looking at these actual ballots and comparing them to voter rolls to make sure that there's a match between the number of ballots and the number of people who are eligible to and actually did vote, these are things that the FBI is going to be looking at.
So speaking of tampering, a senator raised concerns regarding chain of custody to ensure the documents are not subject to modification. So what are the mechanisms in place to actually protect chain of custody?
Well, by the FBI, the chain of custody is pretty simple. You have to sworn agents who are tracking every time that evidence is moved, looked at, taken anywhere, anything is done with it. So you have a log. Before it's in the hands of the FBI, that's the question. Different counties, different electoral boards have different proceedings. So it's not clear what Fulton County's process was, but usually when you have chain of evidence, even for something before it gets to a federal investigation, you do need that log of who had possession of them, what they were used for, what happened to them, keeping track of it.
So Gerard, some have raised concerns about election integrity being at risk due to this raid. But people have had big concerns as well about election fraud since at least 2020. Is investigating potential fraud in our elections the responsibility of local, state, and federal government?
Well, it has to be, because when you're looking at the integrity of elections, this is something that falls within the purview of the federal government. That's why the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, was reportedly on the scene, because the DNI, that office of the federal government, is responsible for maintaining voter integrity, for maintaining electoral integrity, to make sure that there's no tampering, especially by foreign actors. So this is something that the federal government takes seriously, as well as state and local officials. The problem is that there is an inconsistency between states. There's no uniform way that ballots and voting systems are handled. And because of that, you do need local officials to be more involved in maintaining the safety and security of this process.
So if fraud is found, people are charged. Do you expect those findings to change the way the public and government approach elections going forward? And what does it mean for the 2020 election?
Well, I think this calls into account the growing pressure on many elected officials by the public to maintain election integrity, to make sure that people who are voting are actually eligible to vote, that there is some form of ID requirement when voting, that the mechanisms for voting by absentee or remote ballot are secure and are impervious to being tampered with. And regardless of the outcome of this particular investigation, I think that we will see a trend towards having more measures to safeguard the integrity of elections and to make sure that it truly is one person, one vote, and that this is all counted. As for the 2020 election, that's settled. I mean, there's nothing that's going to change there. If anything, we might have a different number, a different result. But the fact is that Joe Biden was president, and now it's Donald Trump.
Right, understood. And just real quick, how long do you think this investigation could last before we get some kind of information on what they found?
I think that the fact that they sought a warrant and executed a raid means that they have certain individuals identified, and we may not know who they are yet, but they have identified individuals who they are concerned might tamper with the evidence. So I think this investigation is proceeding very quickly, and it will be a matter of weeks, if not a few months, before we have more details and possibly charges.
All right, Gerard, great analysis as always. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
The Trump administration today is celebrating National School Choice Week. It hosted parental rights groups and education organizations at the White House today. It also launched a webpage showing which states have opted into a federal school choice tax credit program that goes into effect next year. Many Democrat-led states like California, New York, and Illinois have yet to opt in based on the map. Joining us now to discuss is Maggie McNeely, legislative strategist of the Concerned Women for America, and we have Aaron Boxer, CEO of Diversified Education Services and former teacher. So good afternoon to you both. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Maggie, let me talk to you. So we're in the middle of National School Choice Week. Give us your thoughts here, your reactions on the federal school choice tax credit program being rolled out by this administration.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's excellent news because this is the very first time that we have a federal level school choice program. And we've seen a lot of states go ahead and enact broader education freedom, different education savings accounts, tax credits. But this is the very first time we've actually seen a program like this come out of Washington, D.C. So we are so excited to be spending our 16th school choice week and are able to spend that celebrating a federal level school choice tax credit that will be available to Americans all across the nation for the very first time.
Okay, Aaron, can I get your thoughts now? Same question.
Sure, thanks. It's great to be here. This is a reminder that education is supposed to serve families and not the system. So it's very exciting to have this be School Choice Week. And it's really about putting a spotlight on every legitimate option. There's district, there's magnet, there's charter, private and virtual, even homeschooling. And this week matters because it shifts that conversation from the political side to a simple question: is your child actually thriving? Supporters will, like myself, we argue for school choice because it improves outcomes in two big ways. You have fit and then you have accountability. And fit matters because not every kid learns differently. As an executive functioning coach, I can tell you that, especially for my students who have ADHD or anxiety or learning differences, and they need more structure or different teaching styles. So the bottom line is that this is not anti-public school. It's pro-parent, and most importantly, it's pro-student.
So Maggie, you reacted positively just now, but if you look at the map published by the Trump administration, it looks like blue states are behind on opting into this tax credit program. Why do you think that is?
Well, there's a number of reasons. The people who aren't excited about this tax credit are trying to argue that it's going to take away money from public schools. That is absolutely not the case. What this tax credit program does is it incentivizes private donors to donate to private organizations to then give money to low-income students. It has nothing to do with taking money away from public schools. It is just incentivizing people to use their own money to help these low income families have access to more education options. So we're really hopeful that these blue states will understand that if they opt into the program, they're actually just going to be helping their students. They're not going to be taking away money from public schools. They're not going to be disenfranchising teachers or students in their states. They're just going to be helping more families choose the education option that is best for them and for their students.
Aaron, I'm also wondering, is there a role that teachers' unions are playing in this behind blue states apparently not opting into this tax credit program?
I'm so glad you asked. Yes, unions do not like school choice because it poses a threat. And listen, unions are not about kids. They are about themselves. They are about the politics. And the only reason why they got so big is because Jimmy Carter empowered them because they promised to get him into office, or at least help him get into office. And it has spiraled into this thing that we now know. And they're not evil, okay? I might be overstating it a little bit, but they are incentivized. They're incentivized to protect their own system, staffing and contracts and seniority roles and centralized control, right? The teachers who belong to the union, they're just trying to do their jobs. It's the people that are in Washington, the Randy Weingartens. It's not about kids, right? It's all about the money. And school choice, when it shifts leverage to parents, it threatens the status quo. They make their money from dues. If there's fewer kids that are going to the public school, right, then they're not getting as many dues. And if they don't have the dues, they don't have the money, they don't have the power. And the uncomfortable truth is unions will fight reforms even when families are desperate because they don't prioritize them. On the flip side, teachers are exhausted and they're not supported enough. They don't get paid enough. And it's important that we say that out loud. But parents can't be told to sacrifice their kids' future to protect an adult system. The priority always has to be kids first.
Maggie, I'm curious as well, your thoughts on the role that teachers' unions play.
Yeah, so they, as Aaron said, they are very self-interested. They are focused on the interests of the unions rather than the kids or the teachers. They are much more often interested in pushing a political agenda. We actually saw last July the National Education Association, the NEA, voted on a bill that would force students to stop using any materials from the Anti-Defamation League, which is an association that helps to promote education about the Holocaust and why you shouldn't be anti-Semitic. And these are materials that have been used in states for decades. But the NEA decided to push a vote to say you can't use these materials. You can't use materials that say anti-Semitism is bad or that teach about the Holocaust. And that's just one very small example of what the unions are up to right this minute. And so they're not interested in kids going to schools that aren't going to push woke ideology. They're a huge problem. They are an obstacle to ensuring that kids are actually learning math and reading and the things they actually need to achieve in life and have a successful career.
Okay, Aaron, I want to read you a quote here by President Trump. He said he wants every parent in America to be empowered to send their child to public, private, charter, or a faith-based school of their choice, and that he'll use every power he has to give parents this right. Why has the president made expanding universal school choice a key objective, Aaron? Why do you think?
It's piggybacking off of what Maggie said, empowering the states to be in charge of their own education, less government. Conservatives are all about less government, and liberals are all about more government, right? And so education is where it starts. Empowering our teachers to help our kids get to a place where they're not reliant on the state, where we're not a welfare state filled with social programs. And unfortunately, when Trump is in office, anything that he wants to be a part of, the other side wants nothing to do with it. As they say, he could come up with a cure for cancer, and the leftists would say, no, we're not interested in that. They probably wouldn't say it as nicely as I just did. So he just wants there to be He wants everyone to be successful. He wants everyone to have a chance. And it starts with young people and the messaging. And the problem is that we have so much of this liberal ideology being inflicted upon these kids because they're so easily influenced. The power of suggestion with the pronouns in the emails and the gender ideology, it's insanity. It's, as Elon Musk says, a woke mind virus. So one of the first steps is to clean up the education system. He said he wanted to do that. Keep the government out, the accountability problems that we've been having and uneven access, it needs to stop. And we need to give our kids a chance so they don't wind up being reliant upon the state.
Maggie, should education be an issue given to the states?
Absolutely. We have had the federal government running education for decades, and it has obviously resulted in just abysmal results. The U.S. continues to sink in how we're rated among the rest of the developed world as far as our academics go. And we need to change. It's not working. Every child is created with unique individual talents and gifts, and having a one-size-fits-all system that acts as if they are just all the same is not serving them well, and it is denying them the inherent dignity that they have as individuals. So it's high time that the American system actually reflects that every child is different, and they should have an education system that treats them as such and is going to allow them to flourish and succeed as they were created to do.
Okay, Aaron, I started with Maggie, so I'll end with you. Can you just add a bit more here? What do you think are the benefits of shifting education back to the states? And how do you address some concerns that the standards might vary wildly?
Listen, we have to make sure that this gets off the ground in the best way possible. Anything that's new and that government is involved has a chance to get muddled, whether it be the messaging or the finances, right? There's always going to be naysayers. This is an incredible opportunity that people have been speaking about this for decades, trying to get school choice to be a part of this, trying to get the unions out, trying to keep the government out, and to empower parents and span these options and reduce Washington's grip. It's, most recently, this big shift with the federal tax scholarship model, it isn't even being called a voucher, but it functions similarly because it's letting taxpayers receive credits for donations that fund scholarships, and then family can use that for tuition and other education services. That is an amazing opportunity. And I think while it's happening now, the messaging needs to get out there clearly to families. These other states, California, Illinois, or anyone else that doesn't want to get on board. As a parent, I would ask myself, why? Why don't we want to give our kids more of an opportunity? So basically what's changing is the money and the power is going to move closer to the families. And schools, they're going to have to compete on performance, culture, and results, which always is going to bring out the best. That's what this country is based on, a meritocracy. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how this unrolls.
Okay, let's leave it there for this conversation. Enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Tom.
Thank you.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer kicked off his first ever visit to communist China yesterday alongside an entourage of business leaders. This comes as concerns mount over the Chinese Communist Party's espionage activities and its repression of human rights. NTD's Sam Wong has the details.
They say that 8 days is a long time in politics. Try 8 years.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer arrived in Beijing on Wednesday for a 3-day state visit. He's the first UK Prime Minister to go to China since Theresa May in 2018. The communist regime is considered a major trading partner for the United Kingdom, but that relationship soured in recent years due to concern about espionage, Beijing's support for Russia in its war with Ukraine, and the regime's repression of pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong. Traveling with a delegation of business leaders, Starmer is slated to visit Shanghai and meet with Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping.
Of course, we will have to manage our differences, but that's what you do with a mature, consistent, comprehensive and strategic approach to China. We manage our differences, we take our opportunities, and we constantly think, how does this deliver for people back at home?
Aside from building ties with China, Starmer is coming under pressure to help secure the release of British citizen Jimmy Lai, a former media tycoon and one of Hong Kong's most prominent pro-democracy figures. Lai was arrested in 2020 by CCP authorities and is facing a potential sentence of life in prison.
It is outrageous that any British Prime Minister should go to Beijing whilst a British citizen is incarcerated, languishing, along with many pro-democracy campaigners in jails in Hong Kong and in mainland China.
And just shortly before Starmer's China visit, the UK government approved a new supersized Chinese embassy in central London. That's despite pressure from lawmakers over national security concerns. The decision drew protest, with critics warning the embassy could be used as a CCP outpost to intimidate and spy on Chinese dissidents in exile.
This site will accommodate hundreds more Chinese state employees. We know what that means. More interference, more influence operations, and more intimidations of people like me.
Meanwhile, a recent report by The Telegraph says a Chinese spying operation has been hacking the phones of senior UK officials for years. Ahead of Starmer's visit, more than a dozen organizations issued a joint letter urging the Prime Minister to raise the issue of forced organ harvesting. It's a crime committed by the CCP against prisoners of conscience, including groups like Falun Gong practitioners and the Uyghur ethnic minority. When asked whether he would raise human rights issues with Beijing, Starmer did not go into specifics, but said that he would, quote, raise the issues that need to be raised. Sam Wang, NTD News.
Meanwhile, as Starmer is in China, back in the UK, suspected Chinese agents have threatened to shoot Prime Minister Keir Starmer if performances of Shen go ahead. The UK's Metro media outlet reporting yesterday that Shen received threatening emails during the company's tour in the UK, which is ongoing. One email reads, "Cancel the Shen performance or British Prime Minister Keir Starmer will be shot from a distance." Another reads, "If you insist on having Shen perform, you will experience a surprise terrorist attack. I am not joking with you." Shen is a performing arts company based in New York. Its mission is to revive traditional Chinese culture from a time before communism. The show also exposes the CCP's ongoing persecution against the Falun Gong spiritual group. Over the past 2 years, the company has received more than 160 death threats and bomb threats believed to be from CCP agents. According to Shen's website, the Chinese regime has been trying to sabotage performances around the world since the dance company's founding in 2006. No actual incidents have occurred due to the threats, and no show was canceled because of the threats. Joining us now is James Gorey, Epoch Times contributor and author of the book, The China Crisis. He also discusses current events and China on his YouTube podcast, The Banana Republican. And Rex Lee, cybersecurity advisor at My Smart Privacy. He has advised major corporations and government agencies on matters of cybersecurity and tech espionage by the Chinese regime. So first of all, welcome to you both. Thank you for joining us today. So James, let me talk to you first. Both China and the UK have provided a readout about the meeting between British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Xi Jinping, but neither of these go into any detail about key topics like Hong Kong, for example, Jimmy Lai, religious freedom, and the ongoing persecution of Falun Gong and other groups. These are important topics. What do you make of this situation so far?
Well, I think Keir Starmer is meeting with China and going to meet Xi Jinping because that's where he's most welcome. He's certainly not welcome at home with a 20% or so approval rating. And as you mentioned, religious freedom is not a big issue in England. In the UK, they're getting rid of it, just as they've done so in China. So, you know, mentioning these sensitive topics that would be very important to people who are freedom-minded are simply not on the docket. As far as Hong Kong is concerned, I don't think Britain has a say in what's going to go on there. I think it's entirely under the control of the CCP in mainland China. So the optics are not good. The visit and the highlighting of the cooperation with China from the UK comes at the expense of the U.S. relationship as well and our shared values, which apparently in the Starmer administration, the shared values are diminishing by the day.
So Rex, you heard what James said. Same question to you. Why aren't these important topics on the readout?
Well, you know, I listened to his statement just now. He says they're diminishing. They've already been diminished for a long time. regarding tech and telecom communications through smartphones, tablet PCs, computers, servers. All of these have become surveillance nodes for Google, Apple, Microsoft, plus all of the other app developers, including those from China, such as ByteDance, Tencent, and Baidu, which is an Android app developer. They all develop intrusive apps that are designed to be malware. So we've already lost our privacy globally through the very consumer products that we purchase, consumer products of necessity, such as smartphones and computers, that we're forced to participate through because of the contracts of adhesion that support them. If we don't agree to the terms of service, meaning that we give up our privacy and agree to be surveilled and exploited for profits by these companies, including those from China and Russia, then we can't use the very products that we own. Here in the U.S., we're celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and we're going to hear a lot about that and about our freedoms, when in fact our freedoms have actually been being eroded through predatory surveillance business practices and technologies rooted in surveillance capitalism.
So, James, can I ask you, in your view, what form of negotiation works best with the Chinese Communist Party? Does there need to be specific consequences during negotiations for it to be effective?
Oh, I think so. I think, there's a lot of criticism about the Trump administration and how they negotiate. One of their tactics is remake the board and over rotate on the penalties and so forth. And he does that to disrupt the conventional thinking and to make people much more aware and willing to discuss things on a much more radical basis. By that meaning, we're going to tariff you 120%, 150%, whatever it might be. Now let's see if we can come to an agreement on areas that help our economy. And you can tell how important it is by the level of the tariffs and so forth. So I think trying to soft pedal and trying to negotiate in a sense of kind of fair play, as it were, by Chatham House rules, if you will, I think those aren't respected by the Chinese. The Chinese respect force, and everyone who was in that party, especially the top leadership of that party, got there by being very, very tough people. That's just psychological profiling of these people. They're very, very tough, and the last thing you need to be seen as is someone who's doesn't have it all together or doesn't have the stomach to deal with the criticism and to negotiate very difficultly, very toughly at the outset.
So Rex, you brought up security. So let me continue on that point. So on this trip, Starmer and his team were issued burner phones and fresh SIM cards for the visit to Beijing. This does take place on some foreign trips. It wouldn't happen on visit to allied nations or Five Eyes alliance partners, right? So can you describe for us what types of surveillance methods would be used by China when foreign leaders visit?
Well, they don't have to. Look, somebody asked me if, I was in a discussion about, is China in our telecom network? Are they in our telecom system? And I tell them they've been in there for a long while. Dating back to 2013, I reverse engineered a Samsung Galaxy smartphone and found what's called an interactive application permission command string, or a piggyback, or an SDK piggybacking code in my phone that said android.permission.baidu location services, which meant it was pre-installed, where Baidu paid Alphabet billions of dollars for that piggyback code so that I could be surveilled by these companies, which included Baidu, as a result of the pre-installed apps that I could not uninstall or control at that time. That led me to becoming an advisor for the DHS Science and Technology Division study on mobile device security. So they've been in our telephones since I discovered that, and before that, since the inception of the Android OS and this business model of selling access to the OS user to app developers all over the world. And so, regarding burner phones, they do connect to the internet, and the surveillance technology extends beyond the OS level and what's pre-installed below the BIOS to the actual internet in the form of web crawlers, web trackers, and these are all AI infused today. So you virtually cannot escape surveillance and data mining unless you're working off of a smartphone that's supported by Debian Linux OS, like Purism's Liberty phone. But then you're within the electronic components, there's backdoors in these electronic components. For instance, Intel chips also contain an OS backdoor in these chips, so you don't know unless the phone is completely manufactured in the U.S. with end-to-end electronics, meaning the electronics are manufactured in the U.S. There's plenty of ways to backdoor this thing, so nothing's secure today.
Wow, that is really eye-opening and scary at the same time, that you're saying you can't really escape surveillance. But James, what are they trying to hope to record with this surveillance data? What are they going to do with it, the CCP?
Well, I mean, look, I think they've obviously gotten a lot of it already, a lot of benefit out of it already. There are billions of dollars of IP theft and military theft in the UK from companies from China operating in the UK. Same situation here in the US. As your other guest pointed out, it's embedded for years. Their Salt Typhoon, cyber attack, cyber system, cyber methodology that's been in our common use programs for years and years, at least since 2020. Monitoring utilities and water and power and military and defense systems. So what are they hoping to get? More of what they're getting. They're able to penetrate our deepest levels of technology, of defense systems, of planning, of political power. And by the way, they probably have some of the best politicians money can buy on both sides of the Atlantic. So Starmer's visit, did I call him Starmer? I should Starmer's visit. Starmer just comes natural, I think, due to his inclinations. But Starmer's visit to China and to Xi Jinping has all the optics of, you put it in context. It's all the optics of fealty. The UK just approved this mega embassy from China, the largest embassy in Western Europe, in London. Why do they need such a huge embassy? Right smack dab in the middle of London. Why? At the same time, they're doing IP theft. At the same time, Starmer's arresting people for speaking out against his government. They're arresting people for online opinions. They're arresting Christians. They're arresting anyone who has any idea or any inclination to protest what's going on. And furthermore, Starmer has canceled elections for about 4.5 million people, normal council elections that would certainly augur poorly for the Starmer support. So Starmer's behaving like a Xi Jinping. He's in terms of freedom of speech, religious persecution, political persecution. It's all the way down the board. Surveillance. So why wouldn't he go to China? The optics are everything. This massive embassy, everything shows you exactly where Starmer lives, where his ideological homeland is. It isn't with the U.S. It isn't with the West. It's with China, and that's what this tells us.
Mm-hmm.
So
I want to dovetail on that. Because you touched on a great point there, fealty. A lot of people, we hear about the tariffs that Trump put on TVs and consumer goods coming out of China because we're told by the Trump administration that this is about national security, just like we were told that TikTok at one time was going to be banned over national security. Yet we're still allowing Chinese companies to surveil and data mine us through our very phones and our computers that are connected to the internet for profit. What's a bigger cybersecurity threat? A tariff on a TV or allowing Chinese app developers such as Baidu, Tencent, DeepSeek AI, and ByteDance to surveil us through our phones and our computers? Also, this is done, what we're told, this is all done for targeted advertising sales, which the information trafficking industry is built on targeted advertising sales in the trillions collectively. So all of the data that these Chinese app developers like ByteDance, Tencent, DeepSeek AI collect from our phones and our computers, we're funding this, and they're profiting through targeted advertising sales and then weaponizing the information against us through the China's civil military program. And we're building China's AI IP. Why? Because Google, Apple, and Microsoft control all three on-ramps to the global internet through the monopolization of the operating system. No one can connect to the internet unless they go on the on-ramp of iOS, Windows, or Android. And those companies, in turn, all the app developers in China that have weaponized this technology against us through China's civil military fusion program, are freely given the AI IP developed in the United States so that their app developers can develop in Android, iOS, and Windows. So we're funding this, and we're providing the AI infused app IP given to them for their social media platforms, their gaming apps, their retail apps like Shen and Temu. It goes on and on. So are they really a threat, or are they our trading partners? And we're only told they're a threat when they can leverage that for higher tariffs on everything else. Because in my book, the number one biggest threat in the world is being able to surveil people through their telecommunications and their computers, and we haven't stopped that. And one last point on this, the Trump administration used the TikTok ban as an excuse not to enforce the Protecting Americans from Controlled Applications Act, Adversarial Controlled Applications Act. Again, that's the Protecting Americans from Adversarial Controlled Applications Act, which was upheld by the Supreme Court as the law of the land over a year ago, and they have not enforced that. And it wasn't about banning TikTok, it was about banning all of these AI-infused intrusive apps and platforms from China.
Well, these are serious concerns, and I do hope there are some steps taken to mitigate, at least to a certain degree, the kind of concerns we're talking about today. Well, it was great to speak with you.
One item on the tariffs, these tech companies from China with the billions of ad dollars that they're making profits through targeted advertising, there's no tariffs on that either. They're exempted. And also some of the components that are made for iPhones and other things, those too have been exempted from the tariffs as well.
Right.
You know, when you consider that this has been going on for several decades, it's, and to your point, it's very difficult to unwind at one time. And it's too interrelated, too interconnected.
Yes.
To do it at one time, it's got to be a process. It's got to be.
I hear you, James.
A longer term process and there's going to be a lot of conflicts along the way.
Well, all right. Great analysis from both of you. Thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
The Trump administration is expanding a U.S. military base in Kenya. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Orlando was there earlier today to break ground.
We have to show those who would attack us that we are resolved to defend ourselves. And so that is what this outpost really represents. It is a very tangible commitment to the common defense between the United States and Kenya. I think that sends a very strong signal to those who would be our adversaries.
The Manda Bay Joint Military Base sits along the coast of Kenya, near key Indian Ocean maritime routes. It has long served as a forward operating location for targeting Islamic terrorist groups in Somalia and the wider region. The base was targeted in a terrorist attack in 2020. The expansion project is expected to cost $70 million. It would extend and modernize the runway and allow larger aircraft to operate. The project comes as the U.S. seeks to strengthen counterterrorism and maritime operations along the Horn of Africa. Kenya is a key regional ally of the U.S., and the two countries are set to announce additional defense cooperation measures in the coming days.